everyone, and welcome back to the Hazardous Artist Series Season 2, Episode 6. There is no title because it's gonna be a random episode! Yeah! We're gonna continue on with my original character by Yana, but it's gonna be a little bit, random because that's how my brain works. So, I actually have a couple of stories to tell you guys that happened this week. And then I will briefly describe some of the shading and highlighting techniques that I go through and the thoughts that go through my head. So, story time. If you guys are squeamish of insects, then I would suggest that you continue on. There is no mention of spiders for those of you who have arachnophobia. So you can stay if you don't mind this story. But I'll put a timestamp within the video to let you know where you should go to skip this portion of this episode. So, story time. I'm gonna wait for a moment so that people can skip ahead for when they need to. Story time. I was moving. We were moving. Ken, his dad, and I were all moving because life. And we were trying to move the glass screen door out of the way so that we could get the fridge inside of the house. You know, big people stuff and large fridges that weigh like 1,000,000 pounds. So anyway, I knew I was of no help, so I just decided I was gonna sit on the tailgate of Ken's truck and watch like an audience member and be kind of randomly weird and just give scores to how well they do, because I'm bored when I have to wait for stuff to be done. Anyway, childlike mind here. So I'm sitting on the tailgate and I'm watching the men do their thing. They're pulling the glass screen doors out, complaining because this house is very old. It has been abandoned, so it's very much a work to be done. And so during that time, wasps and other various creatures have made their home inside of this place. And that's what Ken and his dad were complaining about. There were so many wasps. There were a ton of wasps. And it was kind of cold, so they were just kind of like chilling on, various walls and stuff. And yeah, that's the part where I can see everybody getting squeamish about. Like, ugh. Even I am like, ugh, and I actually love insects. So they're getting the glass screen door off, and we've seen a wasp nest here and there, and they take care of it the way that only mountain people can. If you know, you know. And well, they get the first glass screen door off. They're complaining because there's wasps on the glass, and they're like, ew, gross. And I'm like, ew, gross. And they get to the stationary part. The stationary part was so difficult to move for them because it was just stuck. And that was my phone. I apologize. And it was just stuck, like it would not move. So they did like a bit of a shimmy. That's also my phone. I'm sorry. They did a bit of a shimmy with the door to try and loosen it, and they were finally successful. And they were like, oh yeah, and then they go to pull out this door. Now, if you have been paying attention up to this point, then you probably already know what I'm about to reveal next. As they pull off this glass screen door, and I swear, time slowed down when this happened, but I could feel the wasps energy. It was cold, which was the saving grace of this day. But I kid you not, and it was not an exaggeration. This is not. I know I exaggerate, but this is not an exaggeration. 100 wasps fell upon Ken and his dad's heads, and time stopped for me because I'm watching in horror as these wasps are they're tinking off of these men's heads onto the ground. They're scurrying. They're not really attacking, which is because it was cold. They didn't really attack. And they're just trying to get away, but they can't because they're holding this glass screen door and they don't want to drop it and break it because that's a lot of money. And, we're all poor in this country, so He's just, all I hear is Ken valiantly goes, "Dad, I got it. Just go." As his dad is like doing some head banging, like he's listening to his 80s rock music. And he just takes off. And Ken, poor Ken, he's holding this glass door with his life pretty much and trying to just keep it steady so that he can take care of everything without breaking the screen door and having to buy a whole new screen door. So while this is happening, his dad grabs whatever he can to deter these very, very cold wasps off of his son and out the door. And eventually Ken did pull the door out, bring it outside, and everything was good. They were crawling everywhere. They were outside, they were underneath the wood, they were on the stairs, they were crawling around in the carpet. It was very, very much exciting. It was the highlight of the day on a very bad note. But yeah, so that was it. We did get the fridge in, if anybody is wondering. Fridge did make it inside after much joking around about almost dying by wasp sting. So yeah, that was entertaining. And yes, I stayed on the tailgate of the truck the entire time this was happening with this look of horror on my face as I'm trying to decide whether or not I should run. Both the dogs were sitting by me watching, going, "Oh wow." They didn't even move. They didn't flinch when they saw the wasp. They were just like, "Yeah, okay." And as everybody else is like screaming like little girls trying to get wasp out of their hair or off their shoulder, or trying not, or yeah, in the case of me, trying not to get them on me. And yeah, so that was a very entertaining day, and I thought I should share that with you guys for that. And I hope you really enjoyed that, because when we think back on it, it's kind of funny and it's kind of not, but we laugh about it. So that's a good thing of this story, is that we laugh about it. And that is the end of my insect story. As I am just gonna continue outlining this because I didn't want to start on any of the shading on the boot until I was actually done with this, so that you guys can. So I didn't have to wait until I outlined another piece of this artwork. So you guys had to wait. So yeah. And then the other thing that happened was actually scarier, but it was really pitch black. And what scared me the most was I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. So, story time. This actually happened a couple nights ago. The wasp incident happened 3 days ago. But a couple nights ago, the family was over. We were having a good time. We had pizza. We had the barbecue going. It was pitch black. We only had one light, and it was really concentrated on other things and not so much on us. So it was concentrated more for the yard than for the deck itself. So the deck, you guys, sits on the side of a very, very steep hill, and it overlooks one of the best overlooks I could ever hope to dream to have when I own a home. It literally overlooks the valley, and it's so, so pretty, especially during the sunsets when there's not, like a million gallons of haze in the valley. But anyway, so the deck sits on a steep hill. There is about a 6-foot drop off on this deck, and we were having a good time. It was pitch black. No one could really see what was going on in the barbecue, but we all thought it's fine. Like, we know the deck well enough at this point to know where the steep drop off is and everything. So, and I was just enjoying my time. I was talking to Ken's mom, like having a ball, just enjoying my family time. And all of a sudden, all I hear, and you guys, I didn't see any of this happen. My back was turned to everything. All I hear is, "Dad!" Like movie replay kind of thing, like, "Dad!" Like slow motion that you would see in a movie kind of thing. And I turned around, and Ken was gone. And I was like, "What?" And so all I heard was frantic screaming and everything, and I was like, oh god. So I grabbed the light and I go to the edge of the deck and I look down, and both Ken and his dad are on the ground at the bottom of the hill. And so I'm freaking out. Everybody else is freaking out. And you're just like, oh god, what do we do? Do we call the ambulance? Whatever. Because obviously someone fell off, if not both of them. Because at this point, I had no idea who fell and who didn't. And I just assumed at that point that both of them fell. So, I shine the light. We're all thinking maybe we should call the ambulance. And then suddenly we hear laughing. And we're like, oh, okay, everybody's fine. And, Ken's mom's down there with a friend of ours, a brother from another mother, and he's trying to gauge the situation as well. We're all trying to gauge the situation, but I'm at the top on this deck, just paralyzed because I had no idea what to do. And I just held the flashlight down to everybody to make sure that everybody had enough light. But in the end, he was just fine. We're all just fine. But what had happened was that Ken's dad fell. He miscalculated a step in the dark and fell off of the deck. And in the fray of panic, Ken also jumped off. He leaped off the balcony of this deck in pitch black, okay, and chased after his father. That is some heroics right there, everybody. I just thought you should know. A bit reckless on his part, but I mean, as his significant other, there's certain words I could say about this, but I won't, because this is family friendly. So that's what happened to me this week. It's been kind of a wild ride, to say the least. I don't know how else to explain this, because it's been stressful, but you have little bits and pieces of it that's actually not that bad and kind of funny at the same time. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, because at this point, stories like this get passed around and then we laugh and joke about it, like, haha, remember that time. And that's exactly what's going on right now. There are inside jokes happening within the family about this incident, and it's, laughable because now we know everybody's okay and everything. So, and that is my story time for today, you guys, for all of that. And I am going to briefly, because I talked way too much about these stories. They're kind of interesting stories. And I'm going to talk just a little bit briefly on some of the shading techniques as soon as I am done getting this finished, which is always the longest part, because I'm trying to be very meticulous and careful about not getting outside of the lines, even though I used to actually color like that, but now I do not. Alright, so I'm going to leave that one pant leg done and come back to my boot. So I'm going to just take my tool, grab the color of the boot that I have. So I have my outline done already, and now the trick is to shade it and then highlight it. And one of the first things that always crosses my mind is, where is my light? And in this instance, it is directly above. I have been apparently that's my default right now, is to have the light above, mainly because of the live streams that I do. But so now that I know my light is above, what is going to be casting my shadows? Well, anything under the belt will cast a shadow, because the belt is not a design in the boot. It is a thing that is wrapped around the boot. So I have to show that it is an object that's kind of sitting on the boot rather than in the boot. And when I do, I just go over like that. But that's actually not how I would first do this. The things that, when I try to explain things to people about how I do things, it never comes out very correctly. So first, what I'm going to actually do, because this will be much easier on me in the long run, is I will actually determine that this part of the boot is probably going to be sitting in the shadow. I'm on stabilizer. I want to be on basic. Okay. And then I'll just lightly go over this, just to kind of give my basic shadow. Then I'll continue to go over it until I deem the shadow worthy of being a perfectly good shadow. It must be worthy of continuing. And then when I am very much satisfied with the outcome of the shadow, I'll take my blending tool, which is a brush, I think. Like a rough... It's a bristles mix. Okay. That's what it's called, the bristles mix. Okay, so we go back in and just shade. And then mix. And there's really no technique with this. I just like short bursts of like trying to mix it without make it look like the bristles show. And then I go back and forth in whatever stroke line I am trying to get this to look like. And it'll be either horizontal, diagonal, this way, vertical, whatever. As long as it blends in right, I do not care. Okay. Once I have blended that in and go, oh yeah, that looks nice. I will continue to find spots on this that need shadow. Like this crease in the boot on both sides. Though I have learned that a lot of creases don't actually show up as very dark shadows. So I'll probably just leave one of the creases just like a light short shadow versus the other one which is more of a longer shadow. Because it is technically underneath the leg. So there's going to be a bit of a... And even though I know that this boot is kind of overhanging the leg, I probably will not add that shadow in. And if I do, it'll be very light. It'll be something like maybe right here is where I will see my shadow for that, and maybe up here. And just because a lot of this is like the parts of the boot in which this would come into play is not very it's not a low point on the boot. It's actually a high point. So this would be my high point on the boot. And most high points, even under a shadow, don't really have a very dark shadow, if they do at all, depending on the situation. It's not always like that. So that's... Shading is actually a lot of work. And every time I talk to you guys about how I do things, I always go, I never thought of it that way, because it's usually subconscious. I never really think when I'm drawing, you guys. Like, for real, when I'm doing any kind of coloring, there is no sense of, like, yes, my light is at the 90-degree corner of my paper. Thus, the light shall shine down on this shoulder and create the most brilliant of highlights. I never think of it like that. I'm just like, okay, this is my highlight. This is my highlight. And I just continue on that way. And because I know this is kind of a heel, though, I'm gonna test something, see? And that's something I always do too, is I'll test the waters with some shadows and determine whether or not I think they look realistic enough or semi-realistic enough to keep them in there. I'm not very satisfied with this shadow, so I'm going to actually undo my progress on that and continue on. I do know that this will have a shadow because it is a low point. It is also pointing away from my light source, so I do want a shadow there. And that will be all of the points on this that actually have a blended shadow. Now I'll probably, like I said from the beginning about the whole belt thing, I will go in now with my my tool and just add this shadow right here. And I forgot to mention to you guys how I actually make it so that it's a shadow. The layer that I'm on, there's different types of layers you can have your, like, yeah, layers, words. And I put mine on multiply, which is a basic shadow layer. It's a basic shadow. It is a shadow layer. And it's the one that I like to use the most, so I am using it right now. And I'm using a just multiply brush because when I'm using just the regular ink tool, I only get one shadow, and it's very, very rough. It's very sharp shadow, and I don't like my sharp shadows. So this just multiply is actually an airbrush, and I can get different varying degrees of shadow. And the more that I go over the same spot, the darker that it gets. So that's why I like using this airbrush. And I think it is a very good tool if you guys ever are trying to get used to doing shadows and highlights, because it took me a long time as an artist to get into this playing with shadows and highlights. I definitely recommend the airbrush just because it's easy to use, and you can be light with it and come up with these really nice looking shadows. So these are my shadows, and now I will go to my highlights, and the highlights are going to be the best part. So I'll just drag down the cursor just a little bit, depending on how dark my original base color was. And then I'll come back, go to my tool list. I'm going to choose the adjust dodge, because I have tried the adjust lighten, but it does not come out as bright or as vibrant as I want them to be. So the adjust dodge does that for me. For the expectations. And then I'll just do what I did with the shadows and just go over lightly with them and try and get a highlight that I like. If I don't like it, I just go back over with the tool and go as light or as hard as I need to go when pressing into my tablet. And then I'll probably add a highlight right here, just a little one now. And then I'll probably, that's one thing that I have learned, is that when I'm doing my highlights, they don't need to be super brilliant. They could just be, like this. And then you blend it in and it comes out even better than they did when you use the airbrush, in my opinion. Some of you may disagree, but in my opinion, it comes out a little bit better. And if I don't like the way that this highlight is, I'll just use the eraser tool on the bristles mix that I'm using right now, and just kind of like try and mix it around and make it look a little bit like it's all around the boot, rather than just a very localized rough piece of highlight. And then I'll go in and blend this highlight in, and then and that's pretty much all I do for the shading and the highlighting. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed the quite the adventures I had this week with the stories I had. And I hope you guys come back next week. I don't know what I will be talking about next week. Maybe I'll just continue on with my random thoughts while I'm coloring, or I will just be as hazardous as I always am. But yeah, this is my basic shading and highlighting, and I ran out of breath just trying to talk. That's so sad. Okay, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. If you haven't already, then like, comment below, and share with everyone you know. And until then, you guys, dare to create.